century. In the 1800s, I meant, the 19th century. They were there. Which made you know, okay, I recognize this world. It's the world of a small colony taking on a
street whore.
And probably going to be crushed in the process. But anyway.
Slut from China.
Let me say why I got into Josephus. After I got into the book, the second and third section, we have two absolutely different ideas of how to cultivate the
oh fuck.
It's absolutely diabolical.
Who is that? Oh,
as far as Revelation, it's canonized almost in Luke Acts. Now, I wanted to get to Jesus, but it seemed silly after being in the New Testament and they show totally different. What's the point going into the third one in John's Gospel or someone's going, well, they're all making it up, so forget it. So I said, okay, as a tactical maneuver, let me go outside the New Testament completely and try and find out what a Jewish author like Josephus has to say, if anything, about Jesus. Then we get to the Gospel, but let's start with Josephus. So that was the tactic. Now, it was not because I think Josephus is better than the Gospel. But immediately when you're using Josephus, if you're using him critically, as you should, of course, you're trying to understand him, that's what I mean by critically. Josephus says, for example, clearly, God has given power to the Roman Empire. Verbatim, I quote, do not rebel against the Roman Empire in any way, shape, or form, or you're rebelling against God. Furthermore, the rule of the Roman Empire has been given to the Flavian dynasty, the new dynasty after the Julio-Claudians ended from Augustus to Nero, and now all of a sudden we've got Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, the new one has arrived, and God says Josephus has not only given power to Rome, but Roman power to the Flavians. And furthermore, he comes up with this.
Oh my God, I fucked up.
We used to believe that somebody from our land would become the ruler of the world. This is the way he defines the Messiah. We now know that was Vespasian, who was on our land, from our land as conqueror when he went to Rome to become emperor. It's a breathtaking piece of impertinence.
Move, you whore.
I don't think the Jewish tradition can ever forgive me for that one. Vespasian is the Messiah. Okay, that's Josephus. Now, twice Josephus mentions John the Baptist, he mentions Jesus of Nazareth, and he mentions James, the brother of Jesus, James the Good, who was executed in 62. Those are the only, he never mentions Peter or Paul, by the way. You wouldn't know they existed if he just had Josephus. But he does mention Jesus twice. And there is a discussion whether his first mention of Jesus, that's the longer one in the beginning of the Jewish War, I think it's book 18, whether that has been a complete Christian interpretation.
Suck my slut!
It's been debated. Some people think it is, some people think it isn't, some people think it has been slightly tampered with. I think slightly tampered with is the more accurate one, because basically the idea that there was a Jesus, he started a movement, he was executed to end the movement, but the movement continued is exactly the same for things that Tacitus says, for example. That's the Roman story about who these weirdo Christians are. They're followers of this Christ who had the movement over there in Judea, who crucified him, and didn't work. The movement continued. That's the basic thing the Roman elites knew about Christianity, say around the year 100.
I don't want to detour you, but there are people who want to say that they think it's authentic, the whole thing. And they want to say that maybe Josephus himself actually agreed with it or something.
If somebody wants to say it's authentic, I'm not going to argue, but you notice what we end up doing all the time. Let's have the argument about whether it's wholly authentic, partially authentic. No, could we talk about the content first? So I'm not debating with you, but I notice that so many of these subjects, make up your mind about it. But then, even if you wipe out the first mention, let's go to what's it, chapter 20, I think 200, where he's not talking about Jesus at all. He's talking about James the Just, Jesus' elder brother, or maybe his older brother. And to explain who he is, he says he's the brother of Jesus called the Christ. called the Christ, or nicknamed the Christ, if you will. So that would make me think we kind of are supposed to know who this is. He has to explain it because I don't know, there's a dozen Jesuses of that name in Josephus, so he has to say what Jesus. But he says,
don't even think about it!
The brother of Jesus. Jesus called the Christ. I would expect him, but I'm surprised he doesn't say the brother of Jesus, whom I talked about earlier, because he tends to do that quite a lot and refer back to himself. He doesn't refer back to it. He says Jesus Christ. So I have these two things in Jesus. The first one is explaining who Christians are. That's all he wants to do, and they're followers of the Christ. But now he's done something. He has already said that Vespasian is the Messiah. He doesn't use that term, but he says he's supposed to be the king of the world. That's a Greek word for the Messiah. And Jesus is Christ. So we now got two Messiahs. I don't know if Josephus is aware of this, but he set up a problem. He's just omitted Jesus was the Messiah. So, in the light of that, I am trying to take at least whatever amount you want to take of that story as authentic. And there's a deep background to this. That in Jewish tradition did not preserve Josephus. They preferred to forget all of that first century. Those wars that almost destroyed their homeland and their temple and everything else. Not even talk about that. Let's talk about, Jewish holiness. So if Josephus had not been preserved by Christians, we wouldn't have Josephus. We just wouldn't. There's no Jewish text of Josephus. So around the year 1200 round numbers, there was a great interest in Latin translations of Josephus. Latin. And they always put them in the manuscripts, put them in the order Josephus, Jewish Antiquities, Jewish War, even though that's the reverse of how they're written. Because here's what they're thinking. We over here have the Christian Old Testament and the Christian New Testament. Here we have a Jewish author who has the Antiquities of Jews kind of parallel to our own Testament, corroborating it. And then we have the Jewish War, corroborates. This is where it can turn nasty. See, they crucified our Jesus. Look what happened to Jerusalem.
Come on, you dick sucker.
So they were using Josephus as a validation of their own Bible. They had a vested interest in
That's one of those books about nights.
So if I were to throw the argument anyway, I would throw it towards non-tampering. Because otherwise they destroy their own point. And all of these Latin texts, there's a huge industry creating Latin texts. Why would they do that? And then French translations. That's why the French, the National Library in Paris has some of the best of them. And it is also very nice to make them available on the web.
You suck, man.
Because they wanted Josephus as corroboration for the whole Christian Bible. So they've invested interest in non-tampering. If I had to vote,
motherfucking dick bitch.
All or nothing. It's either all in or all out. I'd go with all in.
Suck my fucking.
It could be Josephus is very careful not to offend people if he doesn't have to offend them. If there's a lot of powerful Jewish Christians in Rome when he's writing, he's not going to offend them.
Stupid!
As Tacitus is by saying that Christianity is an infection, and infection spread, no great problem. It's just an infection. It's just something rotten.
Dumbass.
Everything rotten says that Tacitus comes to Rome eventually. No, I think there's a vested interest in Christians not tampering with Josephus because it corroborates their Bible. And they can use it
Suck my dick, bitch.
as corroboration. Corroboration, sorry.
So Josephus, you go even further in your book into showing you're using Josephus to show these militant and non-militant that we've discussed in previous episodes, but how Josephus, how you talk about the Christians here in the 1200s are flipping the order, but in reality, each of those books is actually doing something different to a different audience. One speaking to the Romans as if he's anti-Jewish, almost pro-Roman. I won't go so far to say anti-Jewish, but in some respects, he's definitely trying to tone it down. And then the other antiquities, he's pro-Jewish and anti-Roman.
If you wanted to be a little oversimplified, the Jewish war is written to defend Romans to Jews. And the Jewish antiquities is to defend Jews to Rome. That's a little bit oversimplified, but the Greeks do. But yes, that's the way it is. I mean, he is walking the tightrope.
Fucking goddamn.
He gives seven volumes to the Romans, but 20 to the Jews. So, and then contra Appian against Appian, of course, the sneering Greeks. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to say thank God for Josephus. Thank God we've got him. It would be a giant hole in the first century. But let me draw attention to something. I think in the first century, as far as I can see, now we're not talking about Jesus, Jewish tradition invented something called nonviolent resistance. At least I don't know, and that's not a rhetorical question, I don't know anywhere it is as a massive organized principle before the first century. Individuals, of course, could do nonviolent resistance, but as an organized principle, after the War of Four, whenever there was an armed rebellion, a violent rebellion, either the Syrian legions would come south with fire and brimstone to teach you people a lesson as the worst, so we won't have to come back again. Or the Egyptian legions would come up. There were no legions in the Jewish homeland, but there were on each border. So 4 BCE, rebellions at the death of Herod the Great all over the Jewish homeland. Legions came south, crucified 2,000 of the leaders in Jerusalem. 6 CE, when the census was put in, when Archelaus was dumped out and the Roman governor came into Samaria, Judea and Idumea, and the tax came in and the census for taxation, there was a non-violent rebellion. The reason I know it was non-violent is, first of all, the legions didn't march. Police action could stop this. But in that period, between 4 BCE and 66, 70 years, there was massive organized non-violent experiment, including probably John the Baptist, by the way. It's all in Josephus. But Josephus, remember, is totally against any opposition to Rome. Any opposition. In fact, he's a bit more tolerant of rebellion against Rome, because that happens. You know, rebellions happen. Rome puts them down. Shouldn't do it, but it happens. He describes the non-violent rebellion people, non-violent resistance, let's say, as having purer hands, because there's no blood on it, but impurer hearts, because they're devious. Using non-violent resistance.
Damn it! I'll lose my fucking bishop.
And Rome is geared to send the legions. That's what they're sitting there for. They're in their camps out of Antioch waiting to go out. That's their job. But what do you do with non-violent resistance? If a whole massive crowd sits down outside Caesarea Philippi and tells Pilate, we won't move until you do X, what's he going to do? Attack them? Die as martyrs? So non-violent resistance backed by martyrdom, if unfortunately necessary, is invented, as far as I can see, in the Jewish tradition in that 70-year period. And when we talk about the non-violent Jesus, we are absolutely not saying he invented it. He's programming his vision of God's rule on earth being present into that non-violent experimentation, as John the Baptist is, by the way, as well. That's why Pilate will execute Jesus, but not round up his followers. Antipas will execute John, and not round up his followers.
Come Come on, you whore.
There's so much here.
Come on, you whore.
I mean, obviously, there's some type of foundation for what we call martyrdom. There's a foundation for dying for just causes as a hero, things like that. But what you're specifically, uniquely describing, you're saying, is a program that is developed at this time. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, because when I was reading Canada's Moss's work, The Myth of Persecution, she also came on and did an episode. She was pointing out, like, the framework's there, but monopolize the word martyrdom comes by Christians a little later, she said. And it may stem from the fact that there's this unique program. It makes me want to ask if Jesus really wanted to die.
Okay.
Because if he is... I mean, I'd love to get your personal thought on that.
Before we talk about Jesus, let me go back.
Please.
Go back to what we were talking about, Josephus. For example, when Caligula tries to put his statue into the temple, and Petronius takes 2 legions, they know the trouble, with the statue coming south. And Petronius, being a good aristocrat, governor of Syria, stalls like mad, risks his own life, because he knows this would have started the War of 66 in the winter of 41. They go out. Philo and Josephus tells them, when men, women and children sit down and say, we're not moving, because if you destroy our temple, desecrate our temple, ruin the traditions of our parents, we might as well die. They tell him, I mean, you can read the text in Josephus and in Philo. They're inviting martyrdom. Now, I don't know what would have happened if Petronius had turned the legions on him. I don't know. Would they have fled? Would they have taken up stones? I don't know what would have happened if Caligula hadn't been assassinated and Petronius escaped death because of disobedience.
Fucking Christ.
But they did this, so that's martyrdom. And it's in the Jewish tradition.
Jesus.
Now, when you
this is
turn
boring!
to
This is boring!
the Roman tradition and Christians, it is absolutely true that there is no imperial program or practice of martyrdom until about the year 250.
This is boring!
That doesn't mean there isn't, as I said before, I think, nasty local pogroms. Of course, these people don't fit in, they're different. That could happen. But there's not massive martyrdom. Now, of course, one martyr is enough if the movement can be based on it, as we well know. It only takes one person to be claimed to be a martyr, and you're a martyr if you're killed for your faith, as a Jew or a Christian. Of course. To a mystique of martyrdom.
Suck my dick, bitch.
Of course. There was no imperial such one. But somebody like Ignatius of Antioch, who writes 7 letters, he's trying to outdo Paul, almost 7 letters as he travels across Asia Minor towards martyrdom in Rome. Of course that's going to be huge. That's why he's writing letters to all of these churches. He's making himself a program. But it doesn't mean for a second that the whole Roman Empire is programmatically after Christians. I think what happens, by the way, say at Antioch, the reason they send somebody like him to Rome, he's a troublemaker. He might be an important troublemaker with important people on either side. The governor does exactly what the smart governor would do, off to Rome. It's not because he's committed a crime so egregious that he has to go to Rome. The governor probably doesn't want to get involved in executing him. Somebody's going to be mad at him. Send him to Rome, and years from now the word will come back that he was executed, but I didn't do it. So when somebody is sent to Rome for execution, don't think this means they have done the worst thing we could imagine. Could be the local governor just doesn't want to get involved, and there's a huge dispute going on with important sponsors on both sides. Easiest thing to do is send it somewhere else. Send it to the feds, as it were. Don't get involved locally. Make the feds make the decision. So it's true that there is no giant persecution. But then the real question at that point becomes, why does Revelation say there is?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wonder, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jesus hearing a couple different models of this. Do you think Jesus purposefully knew he was going to die, or do you think it was more of a cognitive dissonance anachronism to put on the movement where Jesus gets killed? He didn't expect this to happen. He gets killed, and the followers, being biblicists, are reading in the tradition, and they're finding, well, this can't be the end. Because this gets into the question I hope we can get into, is why the movement survived. The movement, if cognitive dissonance is the answer, then the explanation is they're searching the scriptures and they're finding their reasons in prophecy and scripture and tradition rather than in the reality. Where do you stand on the issue? Do you think Jesus was, in a sense, maybe it's a bad term, but kind of suicidal? Or do you think this guy didn't expect what happened and it happened, and it was such a shell shocker that his followers are biblical? What do you think happened?
Once again, I'm going back to the text to see. I'm not going to psycho-babble about Jesus's. Here's what we got. John the Baptist was executed. Did John the Baptist know he was doing something dangerous? Of course he did. Any massive movement in the Roman Empire, anything that they would have called sedition, of course, he wasn't militant, he wasn't armed, he wasn't violent. That's got nothing to do with it. He is attracting a lot of attention. He's starting a movement. What Antipas did is exactly what he did. Take him as far away from his constituency as you can, as far south to Machaerus, to his back, and get rid of him where nobody's around. Exactly. However it's done, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. And it makes equal sense that people will remember John the Baptist long after. So when Antipas loses the war with Aretas IV of Nabatea, they say, God got you for killing John, even maybe 10 years later.
How many times does that happen today when a politician dies? They go, you sinner.
God tends to be a little slow. It took 10 years, to take it out. And anyway, so basically now, Jesus knows, of course, this is dangerous stuff. If he doesn't know, I'm afraid he's being very, very unwise.
Yeah.
Now, he knows it's dangerous. If I could use an analogy, Martin Luther King Jr. knew it was dangerous. Knew if I go there, it's dangerous. I go there, it's dangerous. Do you go there to get killed? Well, let's look at what happens. People seem to think Jesus went up every year to the Passover, or regularly. He did not. A day labor in Galilee, that would be 2 weeks at least, minimal, off work. And you'd have to have enough money for your sacrifice when you got there.
Oh my God!
I don't know if Jesus went up
fucking Christ.
Ever. And I know what Luke says. I know. Everyone went up every year. That's Luke. I know Jesus went up to Jerusalem once. I'm certain of that. And I know he got killed.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I'm trying to ask, why did he go up this time? Was he looking to get himself killed? First of all, I would say, he knew what happened to John the Baptist. I don't know he'd have to leave Antipas' territory to get himself killed. I think the only reason Antipas did not move against Jesus is he was prorating the death of a popular prophet. I'm not going to go after Jesus until they've cooled down a bit on John the Baptist. But Antipas would have got Jesus eventually if he stayed in Galilee. Now, he goes to Jerusalem. Again, I read Mark's text as the earliest of the gospel. I don't do that and say, whatever he said must be true. But I have to explain, if he was executed, what happened before? What got him executed? Did he go up to get himself killed? And as I said, why would he have to go all the way? Antipas would have helped. If you said he did it, watch what he's doing. Read Mark. It's the only thing we got. Every night he goes out to Bethany. He doesn't live in the city. Now, there might be a full moon, Passover and everything, but you don't stay in the city if that's where your enemies are. Get out of the city every night to Bethany. I imagine, what I think happened, people like Martha, Mary, Lazarus, probably relatives, by the way, had said to Jesus, if you're serious about this God's rule on earth, they might have said this if they were a little bit on Greece, get out of those dumps up there in Galilee, come to a real city. Come down here to Jerusalem at Passover. People from all over the world, Jews, come out and bring your message down here. We're ready for you. We have followers down here who know about you. Bring it here and we can protect you. Because when you come here, by day we protect you in the temple. Yeah, you have to watch the priests. They'll be after you because this is dangerous. Sedition during Passover is dynamite. They would have known, for example, there was a huge riot in, 6 CE, with all of these people compressed in the courts of the temple. If anyone even said anything about, say, the Roman soldiers, or the not legions, but Roman soldiers up there in the Antonium, they could start a riot and people would be trampled. So zero toleration. Don't worry, we'll protect you in there. The crowd is with you. They'll greet you. And at night, you'll be safe because you'll get out. Everything I read in Mark that helps me understand why it takes Jesus, why he isn't killed on what we call Palm Sunday.
Yes, sir.
Why by Palm Sunday evening, if Jesus wants to get killed, isn't Pilate, who's already in Jerusalem with extra forces because of Passover, willing to oblige? And the next day in the temple. And the next day in the temple. Why does it take so long? Because I think what happened, now, Mark says he was betrayed by Judas. I've gone backwards and forwards on that, but I wouldn't, at the most it's like maybe 51%. It's such a cliche. You know, you're betrayed by your insider.
I mean, it happens all the time, but
Yeah.
either way.
So people can argue it, it happens. I would say by about Wednesday or Thursday, I'm Caiaphas, let's say. I've been watching every night. He goes out to the temple, he crosses the Kedron Valley, goes around the Mount of Olives to Bethany. I could get ready, if I'm down there in the middle around where we say the Garden of Gethsemane is, if I am there with my soldiers, before he makes the decision to go around the Mount of Olives to the west or to the east, I'll grab him there. I'll get him. It'll be night time. Nobody know. He'll be away from his defensive screen. And I can get this all done and get the Romans to get rid of him before anyone knows about it. They're all busy with Passover. They won't know till it's too late. So we have to forget that the whole world is watching. Jesus is up on the top of a hill. No. I think he goes to Jerusalem to bring his message there. He has a good chance of getting away with it. He almost does. He doesn't, but he's crucified. He doesn't do it to get himself crucified because he's doing all the wrong things.
Thank you.
There. I just had a nice. Yeah, I just had to take a nice healthy shit. Kiss that night. Come on, you slant-eyed slut. Ooh, she spit.
Okay, so 3 billion people. I need to start there because otherwise none of this lands the way it should. 3 billion people alive right now trace their spiritual lineage back to one man. Abraham. Christians, Muslims, Jews, all pointing back to this one figure. And most of what you were taught about him doesn't hold up. Not against the archaeology, not against the historical record, and in some cases, not even against the text itself if you read it carefully enough. There are 7 big ones. 7 things about Abraham that the evidence directly contradicts, and that nobody in church is going to bring up. One of them is a tiny detail in Genesis 22, the sacrifice of Isaac, that most people blow right past. But once you see it, the whole story reads differently, and it doesn't go back. If you're religious, If faith is real for you, I'm not trying to take that from you, but I think you deserve the information, because scholars have had it for decades. Pastors with seminary degrees have had it for decades. And they just didn't say anything. The first thing, and this is really the foundation for everything else, you were taught Abraham was a real person. Like a historically real person who lived around 4,000 years ago, who left the city of Ur, walked to Canaan, had conversations with God, struck a covenant. This was presented as fact, not metaphor, not spiritual truth. Fact, the same way the Battle of Thermopylae is a fact, or the fall of Rome is a fact. You archaeologists have spent over a century looking for him. They've excavated Ur, they've dug across Mesopotamia, Canaan, Egypt. Thousands of ancient texts, trade records, diplomatic correspondence, king lists, treaties. We have an insane amount of documentation from the ancient Near East. We have records of trade disputes between merchants. We have a letter from a guy complaining about the quality of copper he received. Like a one-star review carved in clay. Mundane, everyday stuff. Everything got written down. Abraham appears in none of it. Nobody in the ancient Near East wrote his name down. Not the Egyptians, who he supposedly met with, including Pharaoh himself. Not the Mesopotamians. Nobody. And this is a person who, according to the text, defeated a coalition of 4 kings using 318 servants. Think about that for a second. 300 guys going up against multiple professional armies. Even if we set aside how strategically insane that sounds, just the event alone, a nomadic patriarch defeating an alliance of kings, that's the kind of thing some scribe somewhere would have noted. But no one did. So there's this scholar, Thomas Thompson. 1974. He publishes this book called The Historicity of the Patriarchal Narratives. What he did, and at the time this was pretty gutsy because the field was not ready for it, was go through every argument scholars had used to date Abraham to a specific period. The customs, the naming conventions, the social structures that people kept pointing to as evidence that the stories reflected life around 2,000 years before Christ. And he took them apart, one by one, and showed that none of those features belonged to any one era exclusively. You could place the Abraham stories in 2000 BCE and they fit. 1500 BCE, they fit just as well. 1000 BCE, same thing. Which means, and this is the part that really gets you, they don't actually anchor to any of them. They float. They could belong to almost any period in the ancient Near East, and that's exactly the problem. Then, in 2001, Israel Finkelstein, he's this archaeologist at Tel Aviv University. He's been doing this his whole career, basically. Him and a historian named Neil Silberman, they publish the Bible Unearthed, and they go further. Their argument, the Abraham stories were most likely composed in the 7th century BCE, maybe later, and they were a national origin story. A founding narrative designed to say, this land is ours because God gave it to our ancestor who was here first. And I want you to hold that phrase in your head. Founding myth to legitimize territorial claims, because it's going to come back later in this video, and when it does, it's going to mean something very specific. So does this prove Abraham never existed? No.
Damn it.
Technically, you can't prove a negative. There could have been some real person who got mythologized and expanded over centuries into what we have now. But the confident, detailed version you were taught, with dates and locations and a whole biography, that version has nothing under it. No foundation, no evidence. And the honest thing to say is, we don't know. But we don't know is hard to build a religion around. So you got told something more definitive. Something that sounded like certainty. So that's the first one.
Yes,
And it's the big one because if Abraham isn't historical, then everything built on top of him is built on nothing solid.
Dumbass.
But it gets worse, because the text itself, the actual words on the page, they give away when the story was really written.
Oh!
And that leads to something I wasn't planning to get into this early, but I think you need to hear it now, or the rest of this won't land.
The stupid
Right.
machine!
So, lie number 2. Who wrote the Abraham story? For all of Christian and Jewish history, the answer has been Moses. The first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Moses wrote them. God spoke, Moses wrote, done. That's the teaching. That's what you hear in every church and every synagogue. And that matters because if Moses wrote it, the text has proximity to the events. It has authority. It's from someone who was there or close to it. The entire credibility of the narrative hangs on this one claim. Here's the problem. I was reading Deuteronomy, just reading it, not on some debunking mission, and I hit chapter 34, last chapter of the book. It describes Moses dying, his burial, and then it says, no one knows where his burial place is to this day. To this day. Moses is dead in this passage. He is being described from the outside in past tense by someone looking back across what is clearly a very long stretch of time. To this day is the kind of phrase you use about something ancient, something where the trail went cold generations ago. Moses didn't write this. He didn't narrate his own funeral. That should be obvious, and it is obvious once you see it. But nobody ever said it to me. Not once. Not in any church. Not in any Bible study. Nothing. And I don't think that's accidental. I think, well, you're supposed to read devotionally. Heart open, brain on standby. And there's a reason for that. There's this guy, Spinoza, who flagged this exact thing, 1670. He was 23 years old. Actually, no, he was 23 when they excommunicated him, which was 1656. The Deuteronomy thing he published later. Let me not get the timeline wrong here. Anyway, his own Jewish community issued a formal curse against him, told everyone he knew to cut him off completely. And that was essentially the end of his social existence. For reading carefully, for just paying attention to what the text actually says instead of what he was told it says. And the thing is, everything discovered since then has confirmed what Spinoza saw. The camels, for instance. Genesis 12 lists camels among Abraham's possessions. Seems like nothing, right? A throwaway detail. But a study from Tel Aviv University, published in 2014, showed that domesticated camels don't show up in the southern Levant until the late 10th century BCE. Abraham supposedly lived around 2000 BCE. That's a 1,000-year gap. It's like, I keep trying to find an analogy for this, and they all sound a little stupid, but it's like describing someone in ancient Rome riding a motorcycle. If that detail is in the story, it tells you the story was written by someone who isn't from that period. They're writing from a time when camels were everywhere, and they didn't think twice about including them. And the Philistines. On Genesis 21 puts Abraham in the land of the Philistines. But the Philistines didn't arrive in Canaan until around 1200 BCE as part of the Sea People's migration. That massive wave of displacement that reshaped the whole eastern Mediterranean. They weren't in Canaan in Abraham's time. 800 years too early. So those are two anachronisms, the camels and the Philistines. Details from the wrong century dropped into a story that's supposed to be ancient. But there's a third one. And this one is my favorite because it's not a minor detail buried in a verse. It's the address. It's where Abraham is supposedly from. Lie number 3, Genesis 11, verse 31. They went out from Ur of the Chaldeans. Sounds authoritative, right? Like whoever wrote that knew the geography firsthand. And except the Chaldeans don't appear in any historical record until the 9th century BCE. They become prominent during the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Nebuchadnezzar, the destruction of the temple, the Babylonian exile. That's the 6th century BCE. Abraham supposedly lived around 2000 BCE. So whoever wrote Ur of the Chaldeans was using vocabulary from their own time, from over 1,000 years later. They left a fingerprint without knowing it. Like, okay, imagine someone writes a story set in the year 900 and says a character lives in London, capital of the United Kingdom. You'd know immediately that writer isn't from the year 900. The United Kingdom didn't exist yet. That phrase belongs to a much later period. And the writer used it. Some left a fingerprint without knowing it. Like, okay, imagine someone writes a story set in the year 900 and says a character lives in London, capital of the United Kingdom. You'd know immediately that writer isn't from the year 900. The United Kingdom didn't exist yet. That phrase belongs to a much later 900 and says a character lives in London, capital of the 900. Like, okay, imagine someone writes a story set in the year 900 and says a character lives in London, capital of the United Kingdom. You'd know immediately that writer isn't from the year 900. The United Kingdom didn't exist yet. That phrase belongs to a much later period. And the writer used it because that's just how they think about the world. It's the vocabulary they have available.
Damn it.
That's exactly what's happening in Genesis 11. The author is revealing their own era without realizing it. So you've got Moses narrating his own death, camels that haven't been domesticated yet, Philistines who haven't arrived yet, and Chaldeans who don't exist yet as a people. Multiple authors writing in different eras with different theological agendas, different names for God, different prose styles, all edited together by someone later who tried to make it all look seamless. And mostly it does look seamless, that's why people don't notice. But there are seams, and once you learn to see them, you can't unsee them. And I'm not sure whether that's a gift or a loss, honestly. Okay, so where are we? The historicity thing, the authorship thing. Yours the anachronism, the Chaldeans, and the camels, and the Philistines. That's 3 lies so far, though honestly the third one has like 3 sub-lies inside it, so I don't know how you want to count it. Anyway, the next one. Lie number 4. And this is the one that's going to get the most pushback because it's not a background detail or a technicality. It's the whole point of Abraham. It's the entire reason he's supposed to matter. The claim, Abraham was the first monotheist, one God in a world full of idols and paganism, and this one man saw through all of it. There's a famous story, it's from the Midrash, which is rabbinical commentary. It's not even in the Bible itself. Where young Abraham works in his father's idol shop and smashes everything except the biggest one and tells his dad the big one did it. A dad says, that's impossible. They're just statues. They can't do anything. Abraham says, exactly. Good story. Clever. I get why it stuck around for thousands of years. But ancient Israel was not monotheistic for most of its history. And that's not me being provocative or trying to stir something up. The text says it. Exodus 20, verse 3. The 10 Commandments, you shall have no other gods before me. Read it again, slowly. It doesn't say there are no other gods. It says, don't put any above me. Those are 2 fundamentally different statements. One is a claim about the nature of reality. There is only one God. The other is a demand for loyalty in a room that is clearly full of competitors. Scholars call the second one henotheism. You worship your God. You acknowledge the others exist. You just don't rank them higher than yours. And that's what most of the Hebrew Bible actually describes if you read it without the interpretive lens already in place telling you what it's supposed to mean. And then there's the archaeology. 1975, Sinai Desert, a site called Kuntelet Ajrud. And that pronunciation is wrong. I know it is. I'm sorry. But they found inscriptions there from the 8th century BCE. That's the Israelite monarchy period. Not some fringe era nobody cares about. This is the main event of Israelite history. The time of the kings. And the inscriptions say, and I remember the first time I read this, I was in a used bookstore in... Actually, that doesn't matter. The point is, they say, I bless you by Yahweh and his Asherah.
God damn it.
His Asherah.
God damn it.
Asherah. Canaanite goddess. Associated with fertility, the sea, sacred trees.
Damn it.
And this is from an Israelite site, not a foreign one. Scholars argue about whether his Asherah means a sacred object, like a wooden pole used in worship, or an actual divine consort, a wife, basically, for Yahweh. And that's a real debate with serious people on both sides. Yahweh. There are no other gods. It says, don't put any above me. Those are two fundamentally different statements. One is a claim about the nature of reality. There is only one God. The other is a demand for loyalty in a room that is clearly full of competitors. Scholars call the second one henotheism. You worship your God. You acknowledge the others exist. You just don't rank them higher than yours. And that's what most of the Hebrew Bible actually describes if you read it without the interpretive lens already in place telling you what it's supposed to mean. And then there's the archaeology. 1975, Sinai Desert, a site called Kuntelet Ajrud. And that pronunciation is wrong, I know it is, I'm sorry, but they found inscriptions there from the 8th century BCE. That's the Israelite monarchy period. Not some fringe era nobody cares about. This is the main event of Israelite history. The time of the kings. And the inscriptions say, and I remember the first time I read this, I was in a used bookstore in... Actually, that doesn't matter. The point is, they say, I bless you by Yahweh and his Asherah. His Asherah. Asherah. Canaanite goddess. Associated with fertility, the sea, sacred trees. And this is from an Israelite site, not a foreign one. Scholars argue about whether his Asherah means a sacred object, like a wooden pole used in worship, or an actual divine consort, a wife, basically, for Yahweh. And that's a real debate with serious people on both sides. But the inscription itself isn't debated. It's there. It's in stone. It's not going anywhere. And similar ones turned up at Khirbet el-Kham, near Hebron, deep in Judahite territory. That's the heartland. That's home. Bart Ehrman, UNC Chapel Hill. I've read, I don't know how many of his books at this point. 4 or 5. They start blurring together, which isn't a criticism of him, it's more a statement about my reading habits. He's been pretty blunt about this. There's solid evidence that ancient Israel wasn't even claiming to be exclusively monotheistic for centuries. The real thing, there is no God but Yahweh, period, doesn't show up clearly in the text until 2nd Isaiah, chapter 45. That was written during the Babylonian exile, 6th century BCE, roughly 1400 years after Abraham supposedly lived. So Abraham, as the one lonely guy who figured out monotheism in a pagan world, that's almost certainly backwards. Later monotheists looked at their founding figure and painted him to match what they'd become. Which is just what people do. We all reshape our origins to justify our present. It's human nature. And the thing that gets me about all of this is that it's not new information. The Kuntelet Ajrud inscriptions were published in the 1970s.
Dumbass.
Ehrman has been writing about this for years. Anyone who went to seminary has encountered this material at some point.
You can kiss
it's
that
taught in
horrible
academic
for
settings.
shoes.
It's part of the curriculum. It just never makes it to Sunday morning. Somehow, it stops at the seminary door. And I think you should ask yourself why that is. Were you taught the idol-smashing story, by the way? I'm genuinely curious about this because I think a lot of people carry that image around and never once question where it came from or whether it has any historical basis. Tell me. Okay. Now, the thing I started with at the very beginning of this video, Genesis 22, the binding of Isaac, line number 5. And this one is different from the others because it's not really about history or archaeology. It's about what the story itself is actually saying versus what you were told it says. God tells Abraham, "Take your son, and your only son, the one you waited decades for, the miracle child born when you were 100 years old. Take him up a mountain, kill him, burn the body as an offering." And Abraham doesn't argue, doesn't question, doesn't say wait, doesn't bargain the way he bargained with God over Sodom and Gomorrah, which, by the way, is interesting in itself. He'll negotiate for strangers, but not for his own son. But anyway, he doesn't say anything at all, really. He gets up the next morning, cuts the wood, and walks. There's this moment on the way up, verse 7, where Isaac is carrying the wood on his back, and he says, "Father?" And Abraham says, "Yes, my son?" And Isaac says, "I see the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb?" "God will provide the lamb, my son." I don't know what to say about that exchange that would add anything to it. It just sits there. It's one of the heaviest moments in the entire Bible, and it doesn't need commentary. It just needs you to read it slowly. They reach the top. Abraham builds the altar, lays out the wood, ties up his son, puts him on the altar, reaches for the knife, and at the last second, an angel stops him. A ram appears caught in a thicket nearby. They sacrifice the ram instead. Isaac lives. Done. That's the version you know. That's what gets preached. Here's what doesn't get preached. Verse 19. After all of it, after the angel and the ram and the rescue, the text says, "So Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose and went together to Beersheba." Abraham returned. Not Abraham and Isaac returned. Abraham. Isaac doesn't come down from the mountain. Not in this passage. He's gone. He vanishes from the narrative right there and doesn't reappear until later, in what scholars identify as a completely different source document, a different literary strand written by a different author, probably in a different century. And, okay, this is the part where I need to be careful because I don't want to overstate it, but I also can't understate it. Several scholars have proposed that the original version of this story didn't have the angel, didn't have the ram, that in the earliest form of this narrative, Abraham goes through with it. He actually does it. And before that sounds too extreme, remember what world this story comes from. Child sacrifice was a real practice in the ancient Near East. It happened. It's documented. The Bible itself is horrified by it. Oh, Jeremiah is furious about people burning their children as offerings to Baal in the Valley of Hinnom, which, total tangent, but the Valley of Hinnom, Hinnom. That's where we get the word Gehenna, which became the Christian concept of hell. A literal geographical location where children were burned became the metaphor for eternal punishment. I have no idea what to do with that fact, but it won't leave me alone. Anyway. And 2 Kings mentions a god called Moloch receiving child sacrifices right outside the walls of Jerusalem. This wasn't some distant foreign practice happening in faraway lands. It was local. It was present. It was something Israelite writers felt they had to actively argue against, which tells you it was something Israelites were actually doing. So the binding of Isaac might be a polemic. a theological argument against child sacrifice. The whole point of the story being our God stays the knife. Our God provides an alternative. We don't do this anymore. A culture writing a story to mark the moment they stopped. But churches teach it differently. The lesson became, the willingness was the virtue. Abraham was right to be willing to do it. Don't question the voice, just obey. And I think the distance between we celebrate stopping the killing and we celebrate the willingness to kill is maybe the most important gap in this entire video. But I don't fully know how to articulate why yet, which is uncomfortable to admit on camera. But there it is. Okay, so that's 5. Historicity, authorship, the anachronisms, monotheism, and Isaac. 5 down, 2 left. And these last 2 are connected because they're both about what the Abraham story was actually designed to do. Not what it says on the surface, but what it was built to accomplish. Lie number 6, the covenant. Genesis 15 and 17. God promises Abraham descendants as numerous as the stars, stretching from the river of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates.
I was not counting.
A chosen people,
Fuck up and do that, but
a
I did not
divine
count
inheritance.
This
This is foundation level stuff for Jewish identity, for Christian theology. And this isn't an exaggeration for the geopolitics of the modern Middle East. Some of the territorial claims happening right now, today, in the real world, connect back to these chapters directly. And it was always taught as unique, one of a kind. God choosing one people in an act that had never happened before and would never happen again. Nah, but if you read ancient Near Eastern treaties, Hittite, Assyrian, going back well over 1,000 years before Christ, there's this format that shows up again and again. Scholars call it a suzerainty treaty, and the way it works is pretty straightforward. A powerful king offers land and protection to a weaker party. The weaker party pledges loyalty and obedience in return. They perform a ritual to make it official, and there are blessings if the deal holds and curses if it breaks. And that's exactly what Genesis 15 and 17 describe. God is the suzerain, the powerful king. Abraham is the vassal, the weaker party. The land is the grant. Circumcision is the ritual that seals the deal. And the blessings and curses, they come later in Deuteronomy. It's not a loose parallel or a vague resemblance. It's the same template. Point by point. And this is something that gets taught in seminaries, by the way. Ancient Near Eastern treaty forms are part of the curriculum. Pastors with graduate degrees in theology know about these parallels. They've read about them. They've written papers about them. And yet on Sunday morning, the covenant gets presented as if nothing like it ever existed before or since. As if God invented this format from scratch. That gap between what's known in the classroom and what's preached from the pulpit,
that's swallowed the feet out of the jaws of victory.
That's a choice.
A
scholar named Albert Dupury pointed out something really interesting about how Abraham's genealogy works in the text. Abraham doesn't just father Israel, he fathers everyone in the neighborhood. Ishmael, ancestor of Arab peoples, children through Keturah, ancestors of various Arabian tribes. Isaac, ancestor of the Jews. The whole family tree is deliberately designed to connect Israel to all its surrounding neighbors through one shared ancestor. It's not exclusion, it's the opposite. It's diplomacy in the form of a genealogy. And there's another scholar, Nisiowowski-Spano, and I looked up the pronunciation, and I'm still going to get it wrong, so I apologize, who argued that this whole construction makes the most sense in the late Hellenistic period, roughly the 2nd or 1st century before Christ, when Jewish elites needed a founding story that could do 2 things at once: justify their claim to the land and establish kinship with neighboring peoples at the same time. Abraham, in this reading, isn't ancient memory passed down through generations. He's an instrument, a character built to carry a political message. Now, I'd remember that phrase from earlier, founding myth to legitimize territorial claims. I told you it would come back. This is what it looks like up close. The Covenant is a political document dressed in sacred language. And honestly, it might be the most effective piece of political storytelling ever composed in human history. It's been shaping borders and identities for thousands of years, and it's still doing it right now. But it's not what they told you it was. And the last one, lie number 7. Which I've been going back and forth about whether to even include this because, after everything else, it feels almost petty. But I think it matters because it's about who Abraham actually is as a character if you just read the text without someone telling you how to feel about it. Genesis 12. There's a famine in the land, and Abraham and Sarah head to Egypt looking for food. And Abraham, still on the road, before they even get there, turns to his wife and says, essentially, "You're beautiful. When the Egyptians see you, they're going to want you, and they'll kill me to get to you. So tell them you're my sister. That way, things will go well for me. For me, not for us. Not so we'll both be safe. For me." That's what he says. Verse 13. And it works. Pharaoh takes Sarah into his household, and we can all read between the lines on what that likely means. And Abraham, verse 16, he gets sheep, cattle, donkeys, male and female servants, camels. He gets rich. His wife is taken by a foreign ruler, and he comes out of it with a larger estate than he went in with. And then, well, and this is the part that I genuinely cannot understand how anyone teaches as aspirational, he does the exact same thing again. Genesis 20. Different location, different king. Abimelech of Gerar this time. Same lie. She's my sister. Same outcome. Scholars call these the wife-sister narratives, and there's a substantial body of academic work analyzing them. The Genesis 12 version was probably actually written after the similar Isaac and Rebekah story in chapter 26, and deliberately shaped to make Abraham's experience prefigure the Exodus. The famine mirrors Israel going to Egypt. The plagues on Pharaoh's house mirror the Exodus plagues. The departure with wealth mirrors the Israelites leaving Egypt with Egyptian goods. It's literary foreshadowing. Abraham is performing the national script before the nation even exists. But in practice, in churches, in sermons, this is the father of faith, the model, the hero, the man every believer is supposed to aspire to be like. A man who gave his wife to powerful men twice and profited from it both times. So that's 7. The historicity, the authorship, Ur of the Chaldeans, the monotheism, the binding of Isaac, the covenant, and the character of Abraham himself. 7 lies, or 7 problems, or 7 things somebody should have told you a long time ago. And I'm not going to do the thing where I wrap it all up neatly, because I don't think it wraps up neatly. I think if you grew up with this story, and you're hearing some of this for the first time, it's just going to sit weird for a while. It sat weird for me for a long time. Still does, some of it. The only thing I'll say is, and this is for the people who've had questions they felt like they weren't supposed to have. The first person who said most of this publicly was a 23-year-old kid in Amsterdam in the 1650s, and they destroyed him for it. Formally cursed him. Cut him off from everyone he knew. And he was right. He was right about almost all of it. And I don't think what he did was brave exactly. I think staying quiet just got too heavy. I think the weight of not saying it got worse than whatever would happen when he did. Who's watching this right now? Like, are you someone who left years ago, or are you still in it and just quietly wondering. I genuinely don't know who my audience is for something like this. Tell me. Anyway, next time I want to do Elijah, the miracles. Same kind of thing. Take what you were taught. Hold it up to what we actually know and see what survives. If that's something you want to see, subscribe, because it's going to be a lot. See you then.
God damn it. God fucking damn it. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God bucket. God bucket. God bucket. God bucket. God bucket. Stupid! Dumbass. Look at this fucking shit. God damn it. Oh, fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh, fucking Christ. Oh, fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. This is gonna be a goddamn stalemate. That's my goddamn bishop. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Ain't no way in fuck either one of us I could have fucking won that fucking game. Fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. fucking goddamn. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. You whore. Was peanut. God damn it. Christ King fuck. Christ King fuck. Christer fuck. Christ King fuck. I got no goddamn bitch. I didn't say bishop, I said bitch. Suck my cock. Suck my motherfucking cock, you goddamn bitch. Christ or fuck. Son of a bitch. Christ fuck. Christ fuck. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God 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 damn it. Suck my Christ or fuck dick. Christ or fuck. God damn it. 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 Christ fuck. Christ or King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ King fuck. Christ or God fuck. Christ or fuck. God damn it. Christ or fuck. Christ or God. Fuck. Christ or King. Fuck. Christ, King, fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ, King, fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ or fuck. Christ, King, fucking Christ, King, fuck. Now fuck up and take that goddamn poem. Come on, you slut. Suck my slut. God damn it. Suck my dick, bitch. You suck my... Now fuck up and move that goddamn... God damn it. God fucking damn it. God fuck it. God fuck it. God fucking damn it. God fuck it. Suck my slut. God fuck it. 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 God fucking damn it. God fuck 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 it. Now fuck up and move that goddamn... God fuck it. God, bucket. God damn it. God, fuck it. God, bucket.
The white Southern demographic that provided its core constituency is shrinking as a percentage of both the Southern and national populations. The cultural authority that it once wielded is being challenged by more diverse forms of Christianity that reject its political assumptions. Even within evangelicalism, there are growing divisions between those who want to maintain the political project and those who want to focus on more traditional religious concerns. The Bible Belt that was built in the decades after the Civil War served its purpose. It restored white Southern political power, provided a framework for resisting racial equality, and eventually became the foundation for a national conservative movement. But that purpose is obsolete. The political and cultural circumstances that made the lost cause theology necessary no longer exist. The racial hierarchy that it was designed to defend has been legally dismantled. The regional identity that it was meant to preserve has been transformed by economic modernization and demographic change.
Damn it.
What remains is a religious tradition that has forgotten its own history and a political movement that has lost sight of its original.
Kiss that rug goodbye, slut.
The lie that built the Bible Belt is still believed, but it's increasingly a lie without a purpose. And lies without purposes have a tendency to collapse under their own weight. This doesn't mean that conservative Christianity is doomed, or that the South is destined to become secular. Religion is remarkably adaptable, and Southern culture has survived much more dramatic transformations than the ones it faces today. But it does mean that the particular synthesis of theology and politics that defined the Bible Belt for more than a century is reaching the end of its historical moment. What comes next is anybody's guess.
You suck my slut.
History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, and the rhyme scheme of American religious history suggests that periods of intense politicization are usually followed by periods of spiritual renewal that focus less on cultural combat and more on personal transformation. The question is whether that renewal can sustain existing institutions, or whether it will require new forms of religious community that aren't burdened by the political baggage of the past. Either way, the first step is acknowledgement. Recognition that the Bible Belt was built by human beings for human purposes, and that those purposes may no longer be worth serving. The second step is honesty. Admission that political Christianity has often served political masters more faithfully than it has served Christ. The third step is choice. A decision about whether the future of Southern Christianity lies in defending a manufactured past or creating an authentic future. That choice belongs to the believers themselves, but they can't make it wiser unless they understand the history that brought them to this moment. And that history begins with a simple truth. The Bible Belt was built on a lie created by people who thought they were serving God, but were actually serving themselves. A lie that worked so well that it became indistinguishable from truth. Until now. The Bible Belt as we know it, that seamless fusion of religious devotion and political conservatism, wasn't handed down from heaven or inherited from the Founding Fathers. It was consciously constructed by human beings responding to specific historical circumstances.
I see a dick
Those
in your
circumstances
picture.
have changed.
I see it.
The construction is showing cracks. What happens next depends on whether the people who live in that construction are willing to examine its foundations, or whether they'll choose to shore up the walls and hope for the best. History suggests that hope isn't enough. Truth has a way of emerging, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. If you've made it this far, you've just spent 20 minutes discovering how one of America's most powerful religious and political movements was consciously manufactured in response to military defeat and social upheaval. That's not the kind of information they're teaching in most Sunday schools or history classrooms, which is exactly why channels like Professor Archive exist. This kind of deep dive historical research takes time, effort, and resources that frankly aren't easy to come by in today's
stupid.
If this video has challenged your assumptions, opened your eyes to hidden history, or just given you something fascinating to think about, consider supporting the channel with a super thanks. Every contribution helps us continue digging into the stories that mainstream education leaves out. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, Because if this video proved anything, it's that the history you think you know probably isn't the whole story. See you in the next deep dive.
Dumbass. What? That fucker but move that goddamn. God damn it. Don't, dumbass. Dumbass. Dumbass bucker. Mart! Dumbass. I'm not even thinking about slut. Dumbass bitch ass fucker. Mrs. Bitch ass fucker. Come on, you dumbass. Dumbass. Spit, 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 spit. Spit, 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 spit. What the fuck? Slut. Marsh, motherfucker. I got one word of advice for you. Resign, because I'm fixing to fuck your butt. Whisper more. No. March! I fucked his hole! Stupid fucker. Stupid, 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 stupid. The stupid machine. Suck my slut. You suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. You suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. Suck my motherfucking slut. Suck my dick, bitch. Suck my motherfucking dick, bitch. You motherfucker. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick. Bitch, you suck my dick, bitch. Bitch. Bitch, suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. You suck my dick, bitch. Bitch, you suck. Bitch, you suck my dick, bitch. Bitch, you suck my dick, bitch. 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 My dick is getting hard. Now fuck up and take that palm with my whore. Suck my dick, bitch. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God damn it. God fucking damn it. God bucket. God bucket.
The white Southern demographic that provided its core constituency.
Girl. Boop, I touched the girl's head.
Is shrinking as a percentage of both the Southern and national populations. The cultural authority that it once wielded is being challenged by more diverse forms of Christianity that reject its political assumptions.
Constantinople, year 336. A man walks through the stone streets surrounded by supporters. He has just been rehabilitated. After years of exile, persecution, and having all his books burned by imperial order, he would finally return to communion. But he never reached the church. Near the Forum of Constantine, something happened. Witnesses said he ran into a public latrine. Minutes later he was dead, his intestines spilling out of his body, blood everywhere. To some it was divine punishment, to others political poisoning. But one thing is certain, that man, a simple priest from Alexandria, had done something so dangerous that the Emperor of Rome himself had to intervene. He asked a question, a single question about Jesus Christ. And that question divided the empire, provoked the first great council in the history of the church, and forced 300 bishops to decide once and for all who Jesus truly was. His name was Arius, and this is the story of the heretic the church needed to destroy in order to define God. To understand what Arius did, and why it nearly destroyed Christianity, we need to go back a few decades and completely change the scene. We are at the beginning of the 4th century. The Roman Empire is a colossus in crisis. Civil wars, assassinated emperors, borders under constant attack. In less than 50 years, more than 20 men sat on the throne. Most of them died violently. And in the midst of this chaos, something unexpected was happening. A religion born on the fringes of Judea, persecuted, marginalized, associated with slaves and women, was growing. Silently, relentlessly, from house to house, city to city, province to province, Christianity.
Suck my dick.
But this early Christianity was not a unified institution. There was no pope, there was no official creed, there was not even consensus about who Jesus truly was. In some communities, Jesus was an exalted prophet. In others, a temporary manifestation of God. In still others, a divine being, but inferior to the Father. Each city had its bishop. Each bishop had his interpretation. And while Christians were persecuted, these differences remained in the background. The common enemy, Rome, kept everyone united. But that was about to change. In 312, an ambitious general marched toward Rome to face his rival, Maxentius. On the eve of the decisive battle, he was said to have seen something in the sky, a cross of light, accompanied by the words, "By this sign you will conquer." His name was Constantine. He won the battle, took power, and did something no Roman emperor had done before. Instead of persecuting Christians, he chose to protect them. The Edict of Milan, in 313, legalized Christianity. Suddenly, being a Christian was no longer dangerous. On the contrary, it became advantageous. Bishops gained status, tax exemptions, access to the emperor. Churches began to be built with public money. But with the end of persecution came a problem no one had foreseen. Without an external enemy, Christians began to look inward and realized they did not agree with one another about almost anything, especially about the most fundamental question of all. Who was Jesus Christ? Was he God? Was he man? Was he both? Was he equal to the Father? or subordinate to him?
Suck my
Did he exist eternally, or was he created
Suck my
at some
dick,
point?
bitch.
These were not philosophical abstractions. They were questions of life and death, of salvation or eternal condemnation. And different cities had radically different answers. There was one place, however, where these tensions were more intense than anywhere else. Alexandria, the second largest city of the empire, the greatest port of the Mediterranean, the intellectual centre of the ancient world. There stood the legendary library, or what remained of it. There, Greek philosophers, Jewish theologians, and Christian thinkers had debated the nature of God for centuries. Alexandria was not merely a city. It was an arena of ideas, and it was there, in that cauldron of philosophy, religion, and politics, that the man who would ask the forbidden question was formed. A tall, thin man, with an ascetic appearance and a gentle voice. A man who knew how to turn theology into music and make the people sing his doctrines in the ports and the streets. His name was Arius of Alexandria, and he was about to set the world on fire.
Goddamn Christ.
Arius was not born in Alexandria. He came from elsewhere, from Libya, the arid, mountainous region west of Egypt, probably of Berber origin. A foreigner in a city of foreigners. We know almost nothing about his childhood. The records were lost or deliberately destroyed after his condemnation. What we do know begins when he was already an adult, already a Christian, and had already chosen his path. A path that passed through a city that would change his life. Antioch. Antioch of Syria. If Alexandria was the intellectual brain of Eastern Christianity, Antioch was its practical heart. It was there that the followers of Jesus were first called Christians. It was there that Paul established his base of operations. And it was there that a very particular theological school was taking shape. The school of Antioch had a different approach to the Scriptures. While Alexandria preferred allegories and mystical interpretations, Antioch insisted on the literal sense, on the text as it was, on the words as they were written. And at the centre of this school stood one man, Lucian of Antioch. Lucian was a scholar, an ascetic, a martyr in the making. He would be executed during the great persecution of Diocletian, around 312. But before his death, he left behind something more enduring than his own life. Disciples, men whom he personally trained, who absorbed his method, his logic, his way of reading the Scriptures. The Catholic Encyclopedia, centuries later, would not hesitate to call him the father of Arianism, even though he died before Arius became famous. Among these disciples, two would stand out in history. Eusebius of Nicomedia, who would become an advisor to emperors, and Arius of Alexandria himself. Arius called Eusebius Silicianistas, a fellow Lucianist, a brother of the school. And what did they learn from Lucian? One simple idea, dangerously simple. If the Bible says that the Son was begotten by the Father, then there was a moment when he did not exist. Before being begotten, he simply was not. Pure logic, literal, devastating. At some point, probably after Lucian's death, Arius moved to Alexandria. And here we need to pause to understand what Alexandria was in the early 4th century. Because it was not merely a city, it was a world. Imagine the largest port in the Mediterranean. Ships arriving from deep within Egypt loaded with grain. The grain that fed Rome. Ships departing for Greece, for Syria, for Hispania. Merchants of every language, slaves of every colour, philosophers of every school. The city had been founded by Alexander the Great more than 600 years earlier. Since then, it had accumulated layer upon layer of culture. The lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Mausion, the greatest research centre of antiquity. The most influential Jewish community outside Judea. It was there that the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, creating the Septuagint. And now, in the 4th century, Alexandria was also one of the most important centres of Christianity. But a Christianity with its own distinct characteristics. The Church of Alexandria had a unique intellectual tradition. Its theologians, Clement, Origen, had attempted something ambitious, to fuse the Christian faith with Greek philosophy, to use Plato to explain Christ, to transform the gospel into a philosophical system. Origen, in particular, had left behind a complicated legacy, brilliant but controversial. Some of his ideas would later be condemned as heretical. Others would be absorbed into orthodoxy. The line between the two was never clear. And there was another peculiarity in Alexandria: the absolute power of the bishop. In other cities, the presbyters, the priests, had considerable
Not the bishop,
autonomy.
but the
They
bishop.
cared for their parishes with relative independence. But in Alexandria, the bishop controlled everything. He appointed all clergy. He supervised all churches. He was, in practice, a small ecclesiastical emperor. When Arius arrived in Alexandria, the bishop was a man named Peter. Then came Achilles. And finally, around 313, Alexander took office. Alexander of Alexandria, the man who would become Arius's first great enemy. But before the conflict, there was a sect. Arius was ordained deacon, then presbyter. He received one of the most important parishes in the city, Borcalis, in the harbour district, where the grain warehouses, sailors, and manual labourers were found. It was a position of visibility, and Arius knew how to use it. Epiphanius of Salamis, a bishop who wrote decades later, left a physical portrait of Arius that has survived the centuries. Very tall, thin, with a downcast and melancholic expression. He always wore a short cloak and a sleeveless tunic, like an ascetic. He spoke in a gentle, almost seductive manner. People found him persuasive, pleasant. Another historian added, women were charmed by his refined manners and his appearance of holiness. Men were impressed by his aura of intellectual superiority. Arius was not a marginal rebel. He was a respected priest, popular, well-connected, and he possessed a rare talent. He could turn complex theology into something ordinary people could understand. More than that, he could make people sing his theology. The Thalia. The name means banquet in Greek. It was a poem, or a series of poems, that Arius composed to explain his ideas. But it was not poetry for scholars. It was popular poetry, with rhythm, with melody, made to be sung. In the port taverns, in the markets, in the homes of workers. Unfortunately, the Thalia was destroyed, burned by order of Constantine after Arius' condemnation. What survived are only fragments, quoted by his enemies in order to refute them. But even in those fragments, we can hear Arius' voice. God was not always Father. There was when God was alone, and was not yet Father. Later he became Father. The Son did not exist before he was begotten. He has a beginning. But God has no beginning. There is a Trinity, but not of equal glories. Their substances do not mix. One is infinitely more glorious than the other. Simple verses, direct, almost childlike in their clarity, and absolutely explosive in their implications, because what Arius was saying in public squares, in the form of music, was that Jesus Christ was not equal to God. He was divine, yes, the highest of created beings, the instrument through which God made the universe, worthy of worship, reverence, and love. But he was not eternal. He was not of the same substance as the Father. He was not, in the absolute sense, God. There was a time when he did not exist. That phrase, 6 words in Portuguese, even fewer in Greek, would be repeated, quoted, condemned, and debated for the next 1700 years. And it all began with a thin priest, with a gentle voice, singing in the streets of Alexandria. We do not know exactly when Alexander of Alexandria first heard about Arius' songs. Perhaps a deacon mentioned them. Perhaps a merchant remarked in astonishment that dock workers at the harbour were singing theology while unloading grain. Perhaps Alexander himself, walking through the city, heard fragments of the Thalia echoing between the columns of the marketplace. What we do know is that around 318 the bishop decided to act, but not with force. Not yet. Alexander was an experienced ecclesiastical politician. He knew that attacking a popular priest could backfire, so he chose another path. He convened a meeting of the Alexandrian clergy and preached a sermon on the relationship between the Father and the Son. A careful sermon, balanced, emphasizing the eternity of the Son, the equality between the persons of the Trinity, eternal generation, without beginning in time. It was a veiled correction, a diplomatic warning. Arius understood it perfectly, and he did not remain silent. What happened next depends on who tells the story. According to Alexander's supporters, Arius publicly interrupted the bishop, accused him of teaching heresy, specifically Sabellianism. The idea that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit were merely modes or masks of a single God, with no real distinction between them. According to Arius' sympathizers, he merely asked for clarification. He raised legitimate questions. He cited the scriptures. And he was treated with disproportionate hostility by an insecure bishop. The truth is probably somewhere between the two accounts. What matters is the result. The underground tension came to the surface, and it would never sink back down. Alexander summoned Arius for a private conversation. The details of that conversation have been lost, but one phrase survived, attributed to Arius by his accusers. Before he was begotten, he did not exist. For Alexander, this was unacceptable. If Christ did not exist before being begotten, then he was a creature. Exalted, yes, the first and most glorious of creatures, but still a creature, not the Creator. And if Christ was a creature, how could he save humanity? How could a creature redeem other creatures? Did salvation not require a Saviour who was fully God? For Arius, Alexander's position was equally problematic. If the Son was identical to the Father in substance and eternity, then where was the distinction? Scripture clearly showed the Son praying to the Father, obeying the Father, saying that the Father was greater than he. How could this be explained if both were absolutely equal? Two men, two logics, two complete systems, each internally coherent, but mutually exclusive. The Church of Alexandria was not large enough for both. Around 320, Alexander made a drastic decision. He convened a local synod, a gathering of bishops from Egypt and Libya, territories under his jurisdiction. About 100 bishops attended. The goal was clear, to formally condemn Arius. And that is exactly what happened. The synod declared Arius' ideas heretical. It excommunicated Arius and his followers, including 2 bishops, several presbyters and deacons. It ordered Arius to recant or leave Alexandria. Arius refused. But instead of simply disappearing, he did something Alexander did not expect. He fled and began to build an army. Not an army of soldiers, an army of bishops. Arius knew he could not win in Alexandria. Alexander's power there was absolute. But Christianity was not limited to Egypt. There were other cities, other centers of power, other bishops who might see things differently. And Arius had an advantage. His Lucianist connections. Remember Eusebius of Nicomedia, the schoolmate trained by Lucian of Antioch alongside Arius? Well then, Eusebius was no longer a simple presbyter. He was bishop of Nicomedia, the administrative capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the city where Emperor Licinius kept his court, one of the most important addresses in the Christian world. And Eusebius had not forgotten his old friend. Arius fled to Nicomedia. He was received by Eusebius with honours, and he immediately began an unprecedented epistolary campaign. Letters, dozens of letters, to bishops throughout the eastern part of the empire. Arius wrote in a moderate tone. He presented himself as a victim of unjust persecution. He cited scripture. He appealed to the tradition of Lucian. He asked only that his ideas be judged impartially. Eusebius did the same, but with far greater political weight. As bishop of the capital, He had access to networks of influence Arius could never have reached on his own. He convened synods, mobilized allies, pressured for a review of the Alexandrian condemnation. The result was surprising. Within months, bishops throughout Syria, Palestine, and Asia Minor began to question Alexander's decision. Some supported Arius openly. Others called for moderation, dialogue, reconciliation. Almost no one outside Egypt thought the excommunication was justified. Alexander was furious. He too began to write letters, inflammatory letters denouncing Arius as a heretic, a blasphemer, an enemy of Christ, letters to bishops in Rome, in Antioch, in Jerusalem, letters warning that a theological plague was spreading and had to be contained. Eastern Christianity was splitting, not into two churches, not yet, but into two armed camps, trading ever more violent accusations, and the controversy was only beginning. We need to pause here to understand the scale of what was happening, because this was not merely a quarrel between theologians. It was a crisis that threatened to tear apart the social fabric of half the empire. In the 4th century, religion was not a private matter. Controversy was only beginning. Trading ever more violent accusations, and the controversy was only beginning.
Controversy.
We need to pause here to understand the scale of what was happening, because this was not merely a quarrel between theologians. It was a crisis that threatened to tear apart the social fabric of half the empire. In the 4th century, religion was not a private matter. There was no separation between church and state. The very concept was unthinkable. Religion was what held communities together. Religious festivals structured the calendar. Temples were civic centers. Priests were public figures. And now, suddenly, Christians were fighting among themselves. In public, with accusations of heresy, the religious equivalent of treason. In cities where Arians and anti-Arians coexisted, the tension was palpable. Congregations split. Families were divided. There were reports of riots in churches, of priests forcibly expelled, of believers who refused to receive communion from clergy on the wrong side. And all of this reached the ears of a man who could not ignore it, Constantine. In 324, Constantine finally defeated his last rival, Licinius, the Emperor of the East. For the first time in decades, the Roman Empire had a single ruler. Constantine had grand plans. He wanted to rebuild the empire, found a new capital, which would bear his name, create a new era of peace and prosperity, and for that, he needed unity. Christianity was central to Constantine's project. He saw in the church a force of cohesion that could transcend the empire's regional, linguistic, and ethnic divisions. One God, one emperor, one empire. But he now discovered that Christians could not even agree on who their God was. Constantine's first reaction was contempt. He sent his religious advisor, Hosius of Cordoba, a Spanish bishop he trusted, to Alexandria, carrying an imperial letter. The letter survives, and it reveals much about how Constantine viewed the problem. I had hoped to bring back into one form the opinions held by all concerning the divinity, but now I hear that there exists among you a dispute more serious than I expected, over small and exceeding trivial points. Small points. Constantine thought that the question of whether Jesus was God or not was a minor dispute, a quarrel of intellectuals, something that could be resolved with a handshake and goodwill. He was terribly mistaken. Hosius arrived in Alexandria. He met with Alexander. He met with Arius' representatives. He tried to mediate. He failed completely. Neither side was willing to yield. For Alexander, accepting any compromise would be a betrayal of the faith. For Arius and his allies, the Alexandrian condemnation was an injustice that had to be overturned. Hosius returned to Constantine empty-handed, and he brought a troubling message. This would not resolve itself. The division was too deep, too widespread, too emotional. If Constantine wanted Christian unity, he would have to impose it. That was when an idea emerged. We do not know exactly whose idea it was. Perhaps Hosius's, perhaps court advisors, perhaps Constantine's own, in a flash of political genius. The idea was simple: gather all the bishops from the entire empire in a single place to settle the issue once and for all. A universal council, ecumenical, the first in history. It had never been attempted before. The logistics were daunting. Hundreds of bishops from distant regions, speaking different languages, with different traditions, with old rivalries. But Constantine had something no Christian leader had ever possessed: the resources of an empire. He would pay for everything: travel, lodging, food. He would place the imperial postal system, the fastest in the ancient world, at the bishop's disposal. He would offer his own palace as the meeting place. The city chosen was Nicaea, a small city but well located, near Nicomedia, near Constantinople, accessible by land and sea. The invitations were sent, and in May of 325, bishops from the entire Christian world began to converge on a single point: 300 men, perhaps more, from Egypt, Syria, Palestine, Asia Minor, Greece, Persia, Armenia. Some bore on their bodies the marks of the great persecution: gouged out eyes, severed tendons, mutilated limbs. They came to decide who Jesus was. And at the center of it all, as defendant, as accused, as the man who had provoked that unprecedented gathering, stood Arius of Alexandria, the priest who sang theology, the heretic who would not be silent. May 325. Nicaea. The city had never seen anything like it. Nicaea was small, perhaps 30,000 inhabitants. A provincial town on the edge of a lake, surrounded by ancient walls, known only for its olive trees and its mild climate. But now, narrow streets were filled with an extraordinary procession. Bishops, dozens, hundreds. They arrived on foot, by cart, in litters carried by slaves. Some wore simple linen tunics, others wore vestments embroidered with gold, some spoke fluent Greek, others needed interpreters, and many, perhaps most, bore visible marks, scars, missing limbs, gouged out eyes. The great persecution under Diocletian had ended only 12 years earlier. The men now entering Nicaea were survivors, confessors. Some had been tortured for refusing to deny Christ. Others had watched fellow believers burned alive. Paul of Neo-Caesarea had both hands paralyzed. His tendons had been burned with red-hot iron. Paphnutius of Egypt had one eye torn out. Potamon of Heraclea limped on a leg mutilated in the mines of forced labour. These men were not abstract theorists. They were war veterans. Veterans of a war for the faith. And now they were gathering to decide what exactly that faith meant. The exact number of participants is debated to this day. Tradition speaks of 318 bishops, a symbolic number corresponding to Abraham's servants in Genesis 14. Some modern historians suggest around 250, others as many as 300. What we know for certain is that the overwhelming majority came from the east, from Egypt, Syria, Palestine, Asia Minor, Cappadocia, Pontus. There were representatives from Persia, Armenia, even distant Scythia. From the west, from Rome, Gaul, Hispania, Africa, only a handful came. The Bishop of Rome, Sylvester, did not attend in person. He sent 2 presbyters as representatives. This was no accident. The Arian controversy was fundamentally an Eastern crisis. The Latin West had its own theological concerns. The question of Christ's nature had not yet set them ablaze. That would come later. The bishops were lodged in houses, inns, even tents erected for the occasion. The expenses were covered entirely by the imperial treasury. Constantine made sure everyone understood who was in charge and who was paying the bill. But before the formal sessions began, there were days of informal meetings. Conversations in courtyards, debates over dinners, alliances being forged, strategies being drawn up. 3 main factions emerged. The first was led by Alexander of Alexandria and his young assistant, a deacon named Athanasius. They represented the most hardline anti-Arian position. The son was absolutely equal to the father, of the same substance, co-eternal.